This is the Pro Wrestling Spotlight, presented by Hami Media and the Pro Wrestling Reflection, where we discuss the very best of the best in pro wrestling history.
And what you gonna do when Hulkamania and the largest arms in the world run wild on you?
The two soundest wrestlers in the World Wrestling Federation, maybe in the history of the World Wrestling Federation, are right here, right now. Mr. Perfect and the excellence of execution, the Hitman.
WrestleMania weekend isn't complete without the Heartbreak Kid, and he is on his way.
He put hard times on Dusty Rhodes and his family.
They think they got the answers. I change the question.
You will rest in peace.
Get used to it in Ric Flair. Who you're looking at, the man.
What is going on there, Reflectionites? What is going on there to the big Vitoites on the Twitch? What is going on to the big Vitoites on the Patrons, the big Vito brand? It is your friendly neighborhood, scholarly, magnanimous, and glorious professor welcoming you back to the PWR podcast here at the PWR Networks at podbean.com. And you know what? We had to take a week off because you know what? The professor, he is lecturing all across the country. The mask mandates are going down, Reflectionites. People wanted to hear the professor lecture at town halls. They want the professor, they're booking the professor to lecture at college universities, liberal universities, conservative universities. I give the gift of gab to everybody on the political spectrums. So all the conservative ladies love the professor. All the liberal ladies love the professor. Libertarian ladies love the professor. And the independents love the professor. So you know what? I had to take a breather, Reflectionists. I know the Magnificent 7, the Elite 8, the Naughty 9, the Terrific 10. And shout outs to a new Reflectionite. Yes. But you know what the funny thing is, Reflectionites? I don't go on Twitter a lot, and this person, came at the professor, he slid in my DMs, no homo there, TW, but he slid in the DMs saying, you know what, I found the PWR podcast and I binge watched all the stuff from the PWR networks. I'm like, that is damn dedication. We did it. I don't know how many shows we have done on the PWR networks, but you know what? He loved every bit of it. He loved the professor's, takes on wrestling, nostalgic wrestling. He loves TW sometimes when he's drinking and sometimes, when he gets political and sometimes when he's, shooting the shit. And he also loves the Prodigal One JB when he's there at the moment. So, he loves all three of us. So, but the problem is I forgot his Twitter handle, Reflectionite, so I apologize to this newest Reflectionite, newest member. So it is official. We're not the Magnificent 7. We're the Elite 8. So I'm going to call you the unknown until you come back to the professor's Twitter at PWSOPROF to let me know who the hell you are, because I don't go on Twitter all that much. Sometimes I just go on Twitter just to shoot the shit a lot. And I kind of like advertise, but I don't need and maybe I kind of troll on some political people on the right and the left, but that's it. I don't look at my notifications. But anyway, we're not talking about that right now, but I am the professor, Chababa Cruz, the most magnanimous one, but also the most objective man in the IWC, YWC, and I'm not here alone. I have my Gorilla Monsoon, my Lord Alfred Hayes, my Bob Mackey, my Jesse Ventura. He is the conservative liberal. He is the man who loves Governor Whitmer. He's the man that loves Nancy Pelosi. He is the man that has naked pictures of Hillary Clinton on his phone. Your friend and mine, Mr. Wonderful, the Iron Stomach, and literally he has an iron stomach because he's been eating White Castle's Reflection. So I don't know if he's gonna last on this Twitch episode. He might go to the bathroom and give me that finger saying, wait a minute, give me like 5 minutes. He's your friend of mine. Tommy Wonder, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing, man. I don't understand why you can't just go back into your DMs and read it again. Like, do you delete them so that
I delete them.
Significant other doesn't read them?
Of course, I delete all my things.
So Ice Pick doesn't know other dudes are sliding in there?
You know what it is? Sometimes I delete them because sometimes, when you troll people, some people come back at you. And I just I don't need to deal with that. Sometimes I get my zingers out there and then that's it. So that's it.
So you can DM someone if they don't follow you? I thought it used to be you had to follow each other for you to be able to DM them.
Yeah, I got the DMs. I was whatever. I follow people and, they follow me. And then I don't follow back. So they can slide in my DMs. So I can accept it or not.
I'm talking about, to protect celebrities. They basically make it to where if they don't follow you back.
Well, I'm not blue check. I'm not a blue checker.
Right. So, for example, I'm going to name drop for Travis.
Mm-hmm.
When Christian won the world title,
mm-hmm.
I tweeted him and congratulated him, and he responded to me in a DM instead of on the tweet.
Mm-hmm.
But then I couldn't write back to him because he doesn't follow me.
Right.
As I follow him, he could DM me. So then I had to go back into the regular tweet and go, hey, man, I can't respond to you because you don't follow me. And he still didn't follow me. But him and I go way back. So back to 1996, I believe. But it was.
I don't follow everybody, so that's why I couldn't. Right. That's why I don't remember it.
So that's what you mean. Because you're not a blue check mark, anybody can DM you.
Right.
That makes sense. All right. Because Christian is a blue check mark. So.
Mm-hmm. Usually, you know how you get those messages from people saying, hey, check out my podcast. And sometimes, I check out other people's podcasts, some nostalgic, some wrestling. And sometimes I had to get rid of that. Sorry, Reflectionites, it's not about, I just have other things to do, but I can't check everybody's. That's why I don't check my DMs. But once I got a note, that was it. And then I kind of dismissed it a little bit. That's the professor's fault because, again, I'm lecturing. I can't keep all my messages. I need a secretary. That's the thing. I need a secretary, TW.
JB could be your secretary.
Well, he is part of the Professor's Kiss My Ass Club when he comes back to this PWR podcast at a later. Again? Of course he's injured. He's always injured. I don't know. I think one of his titties is popping out right now. But anyway.
Ouch.
Welcome to the PWR podcast, and we are finishing our championship edition of the Pro Wrestling Spotlight. I've loved talking about the U.S. belt. I've loved talking about the Intercontinental belt. TW, before we tell the Reflectionites here what we're going to talk about here to close out the championship edition, not to, take your minute or 2 minutes, but what if you loved about, let me just say this. It would have been easy to talk about the WWE heavyweight title. It would have been easy talking about the 10 pounds of gold. It would have been easy talking about, AEW
or because it's so long that you really got too much to talk about and you're going to leave something out. But if you're asking me what I liked about this, I feel selfish because I already know what the third belt is. And we will have officially talked about my 3 favorite titles of all time. Like I handpicked them all and you picked 2 of the 3, including my favorite belt.
Right. So that's what it is. It's like the heavyweight titles is always easy to talk about. We can talk about AWA, WWF, NWA, the prestige, the history there, the greatest champions, the worst champions. But sometimes the secondary titles are very important with the history of the wrestler. I think it's even more important because we can respect that wrestlers, let's say, paying their dues, TW, because I think once you get one of those titles and then you get to the main event status, you're gold. You're a god.
You're made. You're
a made man or woman. But, women are world champions. We haven't talked about those. But we might talk about that later on in the year. We might talk about the WWE Women's Championship, but that's only Moolah. But anyway, either here nor there. But we're going to close out this championship edition by talking about the television championship, TW. And no Reflectionites and no Big Vitoites. We're not going to pay attention to one organization. We're actually going to pay attention to 3 organizations that have made the television championship very prevalent in the history of professional wrestling. We're going to talk about NWA WCW/WCW. We're going to talk about ECW, and we're also going to talk about TW's favorite promotion back in the days, the Universal Wrestling Federation television title. So TW, we know, the funny thing about the name television champion is, the world heavyweight champion we know is the pillar. We know that's your main man, the main event draw. But the name television champion does not feel secondary. It feels very important because the wrestler that represents your organization on cable television or on syndicated excuse me, syndicated television is a very important wrestler. What say you about that?
I agree, but I disagree because it always felt like the redheaded stepchild belt in the NWA. I mean, there was some great matches for it and all that, but it always felt like I've always felt like
this is the boardroom. We're talking about 3 organizations. So
no, I know
you're right. Some organizations felt like a stepchild, but some organizations felt important.
UWF did it right. Familiar with ECW to know if they did it right or wrong. I know RVD was pretty big, TV champ. You did that without me even knowing, and you knowing I was going to say his name. And then but NWA, and to be fair, they were territory days, so it wasn't like all there every week. But I feel like the UWF TV title was on TV every single week, and that's what I felt. I felt like and it's obviously easier to do when you got one show. UWF was on every Sunday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Channel 7, ABC here in Detroit. And every week, if the UWF champion wasn't defending the title, he was at least on TV talking about having just defended or about to defend it. Like, it was always on the show. And the good thing about that was you have that belt so that's something to tune in for. And then meanwhile, One Man Gang or Dr. Death or whoever was the heavyweight champion doesn't have to be on the show other than promoting the big show, which is really what TV wrestling is it's the commercial to get you to pay to go to the house show so that they make money at the gate. And so you needed a UWF title.
Which was your heavyweight champion's responsibility to get the gate. The television champion, you're right. The television champion was to get the product over more. To make you want to pay.
That's why it was usually a good worker that had that belt. No offense to him. One Man Gang wasn't the UWF TV champion. Guys like Terry Taylor and Savannah Jack and Eddie Gilbert and Shane Douglas. I found that out 5 minutes ago. I remember it now that I read it again. But and it was more towards the end. But it was Chris Adams chasing it. It was the Freebirds would chase it. Like Buddy Jack Roberts would get a TV title shot or whatever. But those were the guys who had great matches. Like they would have, Gargano versus Adam Cole matches versus One Man Gang versus Dr. Death is Hulk Hogan versus Big John Studd is Andre the Giant versus Killer Khan. It's not, no one's going to walk out of there technically better for having watched that match. But with NWA, because they had really a million belts, because we talked about them all before, you had the world champion, and Flair was always on TV, whether he was defending against some tag team wrestler or just talking shit. You had that. You had the U.S. title, which was usually Dusty had it or somebody like that had it, and he was on there talking, and they had 2 hours at least. But then you had the Central States champ, the six-man champs, the U.S. tag champs, the world tag champ. So there was so many belts. The NWA TV title, which is my third favorite title of all time, felt like an afterthought most times. And, it felt like Tully, believe it or not, Tully to me always felt like, even though Arn was the more quiet one, whenever the Four Horsemen talked, I always felt like Tully was the one that didn't get enough TV time, but he always had that title in his arm that kind of made him look more important than Ole and Arn, because you had Flair with the world and then Tully with the TV.
I get you. Let's just, you named a lot of great champions from 2 organizations, so I'm not even going to dispute any of that.
And RVD.
And of course, RVD, that's my favorite of television champions. But, for the Reflectionites and the Big Vitoites, TW, can you do me a favor? Can you get a pic? Do you have the television championship on your phone, or, can you get it available for the Big Vitoites out there while I talk about this? For me, Reflectionites and Big Vitoites out there, the television championship is very important, as you see that right there. That is the Universal Wrestling Federation television championship that was worn by Terry Taylor, very prestigiously.
Still worn, Gooch told me this, by one Nikita Koloff, the very last, the shortest title reign in UWF TV title history. It was 0 days because he won it and merged it with the NWA TV title, and he wears it on his shoulder on his podcast, which is the ministry and the TV. And Gooch wants me to buy this belt from him, and I'm looking at it. I think, Gooch, hit me up. I think I want to buy it from you. It's got stars. It's got, look at this. It's got the Hollywood Blondes camera. Lights, camera, action. It's got stars. This is a beautiful belt. I never really paid it much mind. And it's a beautiful belt.
And that is what I wanted to talk about with the television championship to all the Reflectionites. For that one, you see the Hollywood symbols. You see that on the side belts. On the NWA one, it was very crafty. They had CBS, they had ABC, and NBC on their side belts. The original one that was introduced to the wrestling mass in 1974, if I believe, because
old school logos too.
The old school logos, number one, and number two. Why I say that this championship was very important was the advent of cable TV, TW, because you needed a hook. Now you just named off a lot of territorial championships, Mid-Atlantic, Central States, Western States, all that stuff. That's basically house show titles to me.
Right.
But a television champion is the person that represents your company more because, especially for the NWA, he was on 605 every Saturday on TBS. Ted Turner, we got to give Ted Turner his due because not a lot of people, I hope a lot of people still know who Ted Turner was because this was the man who was one of the biggest wrestling fans out there. He put 2 hours on a slot for cable TV. If it wasn't for Ted Turner, wrestling would not have even started to evolve out of the doldrums of, like, let's just say, that niche audience of house show people smoking cigars and stuff, TW. Ted Turner was the first, was the godfather. People give Vince McMahon, all the kudos in the world, and you and I are not going to debate that. But Ted Turner started it. He lit the fire that gave Vince McMahon the idea to go nationwide and worldwide. Well, whatever. You know what I mean.
What he was, really, if we're being honest, wrestling was a white trash thing. Not necessarily white trash, because you had a lot of, there's a reason why they had all those ethnic guys, like the Pedros and all the Brunos and all that to represent the different nationalities. But it wasn't high society. It wasn't Mad Men watching wrestling. And Ted Turner is one of those kind of people, and he liked it. And he had the power, or the stroke, as Jeff Jarrett would say, to put it on TV, right? So, and then he wanted to, didn't he want to buy the WWF back then? And that's the whole...
No. He wanted to compete. He wanted to compete.
No. That was after the fact. Remember Black Friday or Black Saturday or whatever the hell, where for one day WWF was
was on Georgia,
NWA.
Was on TBS.
But I want to say Ted tried buying the WWF, and Vince was like, no, and then that's when he's like, well, screw you, and then he bought WCW. Or actually, it would have been WWF by then. He
might have wanted to buy it off of Vince Sr., but I know he had no dealings with Vince Jr. Vince Jr. and Ted had like that mutual business partnership. That was it.
Right. But Ted Turner deserves a lot of credit because he made it okay to be on cable, and then WWF was on cable, and shit, everything's on cable now. And but AWA, GWF was on it. UWF was on syndication, but I'm sure there was probably some cable channel that had it on at 2 a.m. or something. But he absolutely deserves credit for helping it grow, because if you don't, and then also the guy from, we're talking TV, is it Lorne Michaels? Or whoever, Dick Epscott, whatever, the guy from NBC.
Dick Ebersol.
That guy helped it because he got it on national television, not just cable, with the Saturday Night's Main Event, where it was everyone watched it at the same time. It wasn't Superstars or Challenge where you might have watched it at 1 p.m. and I watched it at 10 a.m. It used to be on at 7 p.m. here before it switched to the mornings. But that's when they started catering towards kids because it wasn't, as violent and it was more cartoony by then. But Ted Turner, Dick Ebersol, is that his name?
Yes.
Those two guys, I don't know if Dick had anything to do with MTV, but if not, then whoever was running MTV that let him do the rock and wrestling, all those guys made TV possible, which then made it possible to have WrestleManias and Starcades and Wrestle Rocks and whatever the hell World Class called theirs, because you could advertise it to a shit ton of people if you get to watch them wrestle every week on TV.
Gotcha. And you know what? We're not going to name off a lot of NWA and WCW television champions reflectionites because, again, that would be a 5-hour show. But just like we said, last week when we talked about the United States title, TW, you called it, and I agree with it. You called that the lateral movement of titles. It's supposedly like one level lower then the U.S. title, and then after that is the world title. So in levels of this. But look at the name. I'm going to name some names in the 70s that had the NWA Television Championship. And look at it's a who's who. It's Hall of Famers. You got Ivan Koloff, the man who beat Bruno Sammartino in Madison Square Garden. You got Ric Flair before he became NWA Heavyweight Champion, and even before he became U.S. Heavyweight Champion. Angelo Mosca had it. Mr. Wrestling, Greg the Hammer Valentine. So, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, before he was even the Dragon, had the television championship. So in those names, those are Hall of Famers, TW. But you said it, and I agree with it. It's lateral. But you know what? I have to say it's still a step lower before the U.S. title because, again, I think the U.S. champion, in my humble opinion, is the man that's going to, control Carolina, while the NWA champion in the 70s had to be Lou Thez and Terry Funk by that time. They're the ones going across all the NWA board of governing bodies in Florida, Texas, Portland, St. Louis. They're the ones that have to, put asses in seats. What say you about the names of the 70s holding this belt?
Well, we're looking at it in hindsight. Those guys aren't necessarily those guys yet. So it's their stepping stone on the way up. And Koloff, that would have been post WWF champion, right? He would have already been and lost that belt. So it kind of, it's again, we talk about it, how people take step backs if they go from, like, if Hulk Hogan went from world champ to IC champ. That's not the stigma anymore, obviously, but back then it was. I think the opposite. Ivan Koloff, being a former WWF world champion, even though it wasn't very long, I don't think, he being a TV champion gives that belt clout because you have a former world heavyweight champion wearing a world, and I like that it was the World Television Championship. Like, it sounds bigger than the U.S. title. It sounds more important than the U.S. title.
Well, wait a minute. To be fair, I mean, originally in the 70s, it was the Mid-Atlantic Television Champion.
Right.
I don't know if it was World Television. So you have to at least, I'm giving honors to the territories.
I'm talking overall, but even back then, Mid-Atlantic, it's Mid-Atlantic. That's like saying, because really you're adding a word to Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight Champion. Now you're the Mid-Atlantic Television Heavyweight Champion. So really it's almost the same thing. It almost sounds more important than him because you're still the Mid-Atlantic champion. And to the people watching it, that's all there was Mid-Atlantic. Right. They didn't turn on their TV and watch Portland. They didn't turn it on and watch New York. They watched Mid-Atlantic because that's where they lived. So the Mid-Atlantic Television Heavyweight Champion was no slouch. You know what I mean? He basically was a champion. And he was something about women.
Right.
There's enough women, period, like in all the promotions, obviously combined, but I think there's enough women in NXT and WWE, both SmackDown and Raw. Why isn't there a secondary women's championship? You know what I mean? They just added those other tag belts. That alone tells you now they got two different tag team champions, one that goes SmackDown and Raw, one that's just NXT. Why wouldn't you could, that's the perfect belt to make for the women, is to make a female television champion who defends it on Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, and make a woman's secondary title. And then you could make somebody like, I don't know.
I have to disagree because I don't think that you don't want to go into that trappings for women. That's too much. I don't want to be sexist here, and I apologize to the SNX Express, but I think
it would be groundbreaking for them.
It would be groundbreaking, but I think in the logic, and I'm not saying it's right, I think the ladies tag team championships, and it's going on with Impact Wrestling too, where they're doing that. That's your secondary title. So this way, if you got nothing for ladies to be in the main event level, at least you got the tag team division to fall back on as a secondary. At least you can create storylines. You can actually get 4 girls over on television. So it's the numbers element game here, TW. So if you get 4 girls over on TV, then you can split the tag team up, and then that lady can go after the heavyweight championship, the ladies heavyweight championship. I'm not saying it's right. I actually agree with a secondary title, but I don't know if the world is ready for it just yet.
But I don't just mean a secondary title for Raw and SmackDown. I mean, have one that travels.
They'll never do that.
Especially now when they're all in Florida anyway. It wouldn't be hard to have the same person And she doesn't have to, like, 1 week she can defend on Raw. 1 week she can submit. It would be, it would be the best thing ever is if there was a world's woman television champion who got to defend it on AEW, Impact, and WWE. It would never happen, but imagine a belt like that.
We can only dream.
Oh,
for
sure.
We can only dream.
It'd be a great test of trust. Like if a WWF guy dropped the TV title to an AEW guy, let's see if the AEW guy then drops it to a WWE guy or just takes the ball and runs.
That is up to Mr. Forbidden Door himself, Tony Khan, to open the olive branch to say, let's all create this. But now, TW, let's stick with the NWA/WCW. Let's get into the times that you and I watched it. Like, the advent of cable, the advent of syndication. I saw, NWA in the Bombay tri-state area on WPIX Channel 11 at 11 p.m. Sometimes it was 11 p.m. Sometimes it was midnight. Sometimes it was 1 a.m. But you stayed up for that because you wanted to see Ric Flair. You wanted to see the Four Horsemen. So you name dropped those names. So the people, you've always said the greatest television champion in your mind is Tully Blanchard. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
And, and a lot of people say you're wrong because it should be Arn Anderson as the greatest television champion. I think and I think people are saying that because of the longevity that Arn Anderson has had and was involved with the television champions. He was involved with having that television championship in the 80s and the 90s, TW. So let's dispel this debate, or let's have this debate. Why is Tully Blanchard better than Arn Anderson, in your humble opinion, as the television champion?
First of all, I think Tully's better than Flair. But Tully, talker, I know it, but he talks more like a Jake the Snake. Tully got you to hate him. Arn basically made you scared of him, right? So there's two different things. They're both good at it, respectively, right? Right. But Tully had the glasses, the hairdo, the suits, and the belt, and he held that belt like it was the same belt Ric Flair was holding. And when I started finally seeing NWA, and, I saw it in 85, 86, 87 at family gatherings, like I told you before, but then when I got to see it, well, by then, Tully was a brainbuster in the WWF, but Tully always had that belt. And I know Arn had it a few times. As a matter of fact, I remember as a kid getting to see NWA, and Arn had it, and I was thinking, how the hell has Arn got it? That's Tully's belt. Like, in my mind, he must have beat Tully for it, right? When really, Tully probably lost it to someone who Arn beat him for it, and vice versa. Arn lost it to somebody, and Tully beat him. Because, again, it's a hot potato belt, like most of those secondary titles. But Tully, to me, was just, I don't know that I've ever said this in our conversations. I don't know that Tully would have ever been a WWF World Champion. Probably not. But he could have and should have been an NWA World Champion. But because of the politics, and one guy gets to win it every year, and you ain't going to beat your partner for it because that's not how it worked back then. Tully at least deserves to be on the list with guys who never were world champion. And again, NWA World Champion. I don't think he would have made a good WWF World Champion. He would have been the guy who won it and lost it a week later as a transition champion.
Remember, the national heavyweight title did have the same shape as the television championship, so you might have crossed it between the national title and the television title. So
Tully always had that red one. He had the red TV title belt, and then Arn had it too. But and it was probably in 85 or 86 when Tully had that one.
Right.
And that could have been what confused me because, again, I'm 10 years old, and I'm not even familiar with who these guys are. Tully just looked like a star to me.
Yeah.
Arn looked like he was one of my uncles. And he still does. God bless him.
You still remembering Arn Anderson with that ridiculous hat that he had in the mid-'80s? Yeah, the fish hat looking like the drunk uncle.
He literally looked like someone's uncle back then, or dad for that matter. But Tully always stood out from the screen for me when I saw him. I remember as a kid, and even though I didn't really know who any of these guys were, Ric Flair was loud. Tully
and Ric Flair were ready for their close-up, so to speak.
Yes,
they were ready for the camera, and they did it in a way to, like, they wanted to present themselves. They were larger than life, even though that NWA was about the sport of wrestling. But yet Flair and Tully, and we're going to stick on Tully with his robes and Baby Doll and Tully Blanchard Enterprises. You're right. He exuded the swag. He was the star in the making for himself. So having that belt was not a lower tier. it was very important. And he had wars with Dusty Rhodes. He had wars with Magnum TA. He had wars with the Rock and Roll Express. Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson when they did their singles, pushes for television championship matches. So I can agree with you with Tully Blanchard having that swag. I just think that everybody always pushes for Arn because of, I think, the longevity, and he's always had it. It's almost it's like I said,
he's
with
a cool uncle.
Well, not only he's the cool uncle, but just
actually,
like
Tully would be the cool uncle. Arn would be the teach you how to hunt and fish and bear shoot.
But just like I said on the last episode, Luger was synonymous with the U.S. belt. I think people just say Arn is synonymous with the television championship.
Some people, not just people.
Okay,
Tully
well, not you.
And that belt are hand in hand to me.
Okay. Well, before we talk about another television championship, because I want to talk about this guy, any matches that you remember for the television championship in the 80s, hold on into the 80s that you saw that just resonated with TW, one match or whatever.
One with the I Quit, the Tully and...
But that was the U.S. That was U.S.
It was U.S. Okay, yes. Yeah. So, but... No, really, what resonates to me is Tully carrying that red belt around all the time.
Well, it would be Tully and Dusty for that belt a lot.
But I didn't get to see matches. I always got to see Saturday night, and they were usually talking on there, right?
Oh, wait. Before anything, let me explain the rules of the television championship belt. If Reflection Nights forgot, on 605 every Saturday when the television champion was on TV, whoever he was, the stipulation was as goes. You had 10 or 15 minutes the most
or television time remaining
to defend that title and win that title by that specific time, TW. So the rules were set there. So it was fast paced, pinfalls, near falls and false finishes was happening on a weekly basis, TW. Did that sour you or did that excite you every week?
If anything, and I completely forgot about the 10-minute because there was a long time where it was 10-minute or 15. Usually 15 because it's a quarter, each segment got a quarter. But the thing was, it makes it harder to win. Mm-hmm. And it also makes it easier for the heel to keep it because he doesn't have to win or lose, but he runs out of time of beating him, right? That's how Dustin got his job in the WWF. He lasted 10 minutes with Ted DiBiase. Ted did not beat him in under 10 minutes. Dustin got his job with the WWF.
Right.
So those are cool to me. I think those are – I remember, okay, it's a two-sided coin. You have the heel as champion. As a fan, you're mad that the babyface only gets 10 minutes. But if the babyface is the champion and the heel doesn't win it in 10 minutes, which is usually not the case, you were relieved that your babyface hero – did make it to 10 minutes. So it's all subjective to how you feel about the guy, how you feel about the 10-minute time limit.
Yeah, and when the heel is the champion, let's say Tully Blanchard was defending the title against, let's say, Sam Houston. And right. Sam Houston gave Tully Blanchard 10 or 15 good minutes and got it to a draw. What I think the gauge of
those guys.
It made Sam. That's what it was. It was supposed to make Sam Houston, even in defeat, even in not getting that title, he's this close. And you can see yourself paying money. That's the most important thing, to go to a house show to see Sam Houston attempt to get that title against Tully Blanchard and when it's 30 minutes or an hour. That's what it would be.
And that's what they would do. They would be like, all right, because he got so close, because that's what it would be. It would have been Sam Houston whooping Tully's ass the whole 10 minutes. It wasn't like he got pummeled for 8.5 and then do a small package on to have the bell ring before the 3 count, which also happened. But now they're like, oh, special occasion, we're going to double the time limit for the TV title, but at the Omni, not on TV. You got to come down there. And that stuff worked. And you really thought that when you went there, like, oh, but then that's when the heel does go over because the experience and the craftiness of the veteran heel overcomes the youth and he makes a mistake and gets caught. Which, by the way, another reason, Spinebuster is great, right? That's synonymous with Arn. Also, he did a DDT. But Tully Blanchard back then had one of the coolest moves ever, the slingshot suplex that barely anyone ever does to this day. I watched someone
because no wrestler can hold themselves. That's what it is.
Right.
That's a lot of. That's a trust issue.
Someone, I think it was AJ Styles recently did a slingshot into something else, and I was like, "Whoa!" That, like, what? But it's hard, right? Because another thing, and I tried slingshot suplexing somebody. If you don't hit their thighs on that top rope, they're not bouncing back. You're basically gutting them on the top rope, but then you just got to sell it like you did it on purpose. But you have to hit. They have to be straight-legged, and you have to hit their thighs to bounce back over. And Tully was deceptively strong for his size. But if you look at him, he had the high school, college wrestler build. Thick shoulders, thick lats, and just stocky guy for being so short.
Absolutely.
I don't know how short he was, but Tully had the coolest move, and when he won with that move and was still television champion or Mid-Atlantic, whatever that other heavyweight title belt was you said.
Absolutely. I agree. The national heavyweight title. I agree.
Yeah.
100%. So Reflectionites, bear with me and TW here because we're going to go off the rails sometimes. We might hit the 80s, might hit the 90s. We might even talk about other organizations. So we're going to still stick with the NWA, but I just wanted to put into this because in the late 80s, you know, Tully and Dusty was a great tier match on a card, on a house show. We know this. Before a Ric Flair title defense, before a U.S. title defense, a television title match between Dusty and Tully was a marquee match. But in the late 80s, one of your favorites, the man called Sting, had that belt in 89. And, you know, TW, like you said, certain people were given that test. That it was that level test. And Sting, you know, went really level by level. It was the television championship. Then he went to the world heavyweight title. He did not go with television US, which would have been like the real ladder of success. But he went television. I guess they wanted to test Sting out, being the popular guy. And of course, you always talk about that comparison with himself and Ultimate Warrior. You know, if Warrior had the Intercontinental belt, then Sting had to have the television belt, so this way he could keep up with the Joneses. But not about how great or successful his reign was, but an underrated match.
Did he beat Nikita for it?
No, he beat Mike Rotunda of the Varsity Club for the television championship. But an underrated match that, you know, many people, you know, still talk to this day was the man and the feud of, you know, the secondary feud of 1989. Great Muta, the man from Japan. And when they fought for the television, it would be still going to this day because, you know, Muta in his 50s and Sting in his 60s. They would still be doing that right now, as you say. But in 89, when nobody knew who the Great Muta was, even though he was the super black ninja of world-class championship wrestling. But anyway, that's another story for another day. But
that's a successful gimmick change.
It's a successful gimmick name change, but Great Muta, Gary Hart, that synergy was there. And you had Sting and Eddie Gilbert. Great American Bash, 1989, Baltimore, Maryland. I have to talk about this because I think that match even topped Ricky Steamboat and Lex Luger for the U.S. title. I didn't care about that match. I cared about the television title. Then I cared about Funk and Flair. What say you about Sting and Muta in that 89, that blissful 89?
This is going to make you crazy. Sting and Muta was so good, I completely forgot the TV title was part of it.
Oh, wow.
Didn't Muta end up beating him for it?
Yes.
So, but Muta came in and they built him up right. He did the house shows. And Muta was always that guy that you wanted to cheer for him, but Gary Hart you couldn't because of Gary Hart. And then he always did the green mist, right? But other than that, he always teased turning babyface. Like, he'd do Muta's so good at doing the head thing and like getting the crowd to react. Muta's underrated. Also, by the way, which I think he had that stupid Rick Rude belt that the Gooch thinks is a world title, the international WCW title, whatever. I think Muta had that.
He was an NWA heavyweight champion when they had that kind of dealings.
Garbage. That's not a real world title. Muta should have been a world champion in WCW or NWA. Pick your poison. I think he wrestled Flair too. As either Flair was the baby face and Gary Hart was still involved.
He fought him
face.
They had matches like Clash. They had a Starrcade, Iron Man tournament, and he fought him there. So there was those times that they clashed each other, but it wasn't for the heavyweight title.
Muta's good stuff, and he's probably my third favorite painted wrestler. You know, Warrior, Sting, and then Muta. And
the reason I wanted to bring that match up, for all the Reflectionites here is because that crowd was ready for that match. And the storyline was so great because Muta is coming as the number one contender, undefeated. So who can stop the undefeated streak of Great Muta? And everybody looked at Sting with the great one-loss record, the All-American Kid. So you had that international flavor, you had the patriotic feel, and that match, again, to me, the synergy was right there. And then they had chicanery at the end.
Yeah, but that's the Daniel Bryan thing. It made you like Sting more because he got screwed, right? Mm-hmm. And then they fought a few more times at that, and then eventually, didn't those two team after Muta went babyface? Sting and Muta. They
became friendly in Japan, and they teamed up against the Steiner brothers in the Tokyo Dome.
Oh hell, I gotta find that then because Sting and Luger versus Steiner brothers is good for me, but I'm sure it's not gonna be as good as I thought it was back then. But but those Sting and Muta just had chemistry. Like they absolutely did good things together, and so did Sting and Rude before he killed him. But literally killed him. That's really...
You see this respect? He just said that with a straight face, and he wanted me to keep a straight face. I can't keep a straight face on that.
But yeah, Muta. Again, I don't even know that I would even remember that he was TV champion or that Sting was. To be honest with you, and I know Sting was U.S. champion too, so he must have won that after losing the world title. But it's just there's so many title changes, and by the mid-'90s, everybody had every belt 10 times.
Yeah,
so it just gets jarbled. But
okay,
yes, Sting, and here I gotta say this. I can't not say this. Sting beating Mike Rotunda. Mike Rotunda isn't really a UWF guy, but Sting winning that title after it's unified with the NWA and UWF, it's Sting getting a UWF belt. So I do. Now that you remind me, I do remember Sting getting that belt, me thinking it's cool because even though it's not the same TV title, it's still kind of the UWF TV title as well. I do remember when Nikita beat Terry and they got them belts, I was mad that they kept the NWA one and tossed the UWF one.
Yeah,
like,
out to the side.
And make a new belt, right? Right. I felt like they just dissolved the UWF title, not merged it. And funny enough, I love the TV title. It's one of my favorite, most iconic belts. But being such a fan of the UWF, and I'd said this before, when Turner bought him, I was excited, but also sad because they just dissolved it. It like what should have been a good thing, like the UWF becoming a bigger deal, they just went away and you stole the 5 wrestlers that were worth the damn. Sting, Gilbert, Rick Steiner, Terry Taylor, and whoever else, Dr. Death.
Right. And speaking of the Universal Wrestling Federation Reflectionites, and since TW always kind of like, he takes me on all levels. He takes me everywhere. It's like a roller coaster when TW speaks, I got to keep up with him. So speaking of the UWF, let's talk about the UWF a little bit because, Mid-South and Bill Watts, he wanted to be national himself too, and it was Mid-South first and then Universal Wrestling Federation. So he introduced his television championship. But the funny thing with the television championship in Bill Watts' territory, it wasn't a belt. It was a medal. It was an Olympic medal.
In Mid-South.
It was the Mid-South medal. So, TW, you remember those? Remember, we did a couple of episodes that I told you to watch on YouTube. And when Terry Taylor had the belt or was going after that television championship, he was going after the medal. It wasn't a belt.
That's all news to me right now. I did not know this.
This is drinking. This is good drinking from We did shows, and this is my job to watch it.
Terry Taylor had that belt. Shane Douglas had that belt. Chris Adams tried winning that belt. Savannah Jack had that belt.
But remember, TW, before the Universal Wrestling Federation even came into fruition, it was Mid-South. So when it was the Mid-South studio shows, Terry Taylor, when he won that title in 1984, he won a medal. That's
before my time.
Right. He won a bootleg Olympic gold medal. That's what it was. So I don't know if they kept the same traditions of the 10-minute, 15-minute rule. But, TW, you talked about Terry Taylor as one of your favorites, and he was a multiple-time television champion. You talked about Nikita Koloff and merging that as the last champion. But, I guess you could say, and you even said that Shane Douglas was a former television champion when you started watching it a little bit. At the tail.
You want some irony?
What's the irony?
Guess who the first UWF television champion was? May 2nd, 1984. This is mind-blowing.
That's my birthday. I'm 7 years old that day.
And I wonder if this played into Nikita being the last champion. That's your hint.
It's not Ivan Koloff, right?
Yeah, one more guy.
Then it's Crusher Khrushchev.
It is Crusher Khrushchev.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's the first one, and he lost it to who?
Terry Taylor?
Taylor, yep. Holy shit, Adrian Street and Bill Dundee had that belt, too.
So, TW, you know, what you loved about the Universal Wrestling Federation, give your a little assessment to why the television championship probably meant more in this organization than maybe the NWA.
Because it was on TV every single week. It was always on TV, and Dr. Death was champion. Black Bart was champion for a minute. One Man Gang was champion. Ted DiBiase was chasing that belt. Ted was my guy, right? But Terry Taylor was my very first favorite guy, not in the WWF. When I saw him, I was like, that's a blonde-headed Tito Santana. He did the flying forearm. He did the figure four leg lock, and he was a babyface. And then he had that TV title. I think he was TV champion when I started watching. And then he turned on Chris Adams. I've always been a Chris Adams fan. I wouldn't put Chris Adams in the should have been a world champion because he really never did anything in WWF or WCW, right? And so world class, fine. Maybe he should have been a world class heavyweight champion, but you know, whatever. But he turned on Chris Adams and joined Hot Stuff Hyatt International with Eddie Gilbert and became just a dick. Like, we went from being the All-American, like you like to describe guys, just baby face, nicest guy in the world, to just the complete, utter asshole, like the high school quarterback that everybody hates but really wants to be friends with so they can be popular. And and Chris Adams chased him for that belt and never won it. And I didn't realize he never won it because in my memory banks, what do you call it, the Mandela effect?
Yeah.
Chris Adams was the television champion. And I love Savannah Jack, by the way, who Savannah Jack doesn't get enough credit. There was a feud between Savannah Jack and Chris Adams, also for the TV title, over the super kick. Because Chris Adams had the Savat kick and Savannah Jack had the super kick, but it was a friendly rivalry. Neither one of them were heels. And they had matches.
The super kick from Savannah Jack was American. The Savat kick was Jolly Old England.
Avon.
Yes, was Jolly Old England.
But I just, we talked about it before I think we started recording, or maybe we were recording. It was the Intercontinental title for the UWF. And the guys that had it were workers. They weren't, slobs, for lack of a better word. They weren't guys who got discovered bouncing at a bar. They were guys that probably grew up watching wrestling and wanted to be one.
As much as you love the title, we have to remember that certain things, like, again, the television title was a medal first. So, and Bill Watts wanted to go global himself. He had delusions of grandeur for all that stuff, and then he had to rename it the UWF Television Championship. I remember there was a North American Championship. So, sometimes that history gets kind of murky because wasn't the North American Championship then turned into the UWF? There's a lot of murky history. Right.
Mid-South champion became
but you understand the plight of trying to keep up with the history because with the territories.
Money. I think Bill Watts ever did that I didn't like or approve of is that stupid no going off the top rope rule. I didn't mind the not tossing a guy over the top rope because on the side note, not being to be disqualified for throwing a guy over the top rope, which is kind of dangerous. As a little kid, that makes sense. Like, dude, you're trying to kill him? Why are you throwing him over the top rope? But the secondary thing that does is it makes a battle royal feel dangerous because that's how you lose is getting thrown over the top rope. So it makes – because right now a battle royal to me is – listen, I'm only using this term because that's what it was when I was a kid. But the midget match, it was a novelty. The Battle Royal no one left the show saying the Battle Royal was their favorite event, right? Royal Rumble, different. Pat Patterson came up with that idea, that concept that Vince hated, by the way. Dick Ebersol liked it. He come up with that concept, and it made it more interesting because you have moments within that Battle Royal where there's just two guys in there and then more guys come in. And it made
it more polished. It made it more refined.
But the Battle Royal, but Bill Watts, I think if he got Ted Turner to invest in him, WCW, NWA goes away. and doesn't become WCW. UWF is the number 2.
And speaking of which, because, we're recording this and you're going to hear this in a couple of days, but a couple of days ago, Reflectionites, for 2020 Wonder purposes, there was a unification match between the Impact World Champion and the AEW World Champion, Kenny Omega and Rich Swann. And, since that has already taken place and Kenny Omega has now is now a AEW champion and Impact World Champion, we have to at least talk about the
TNA champion.
And TNA champion. We have to at least talk about, in the television realm, one of the best storylines ever for the unification, Terry Taylor and Nikita Koloff, the 2 representing companies as 2 legitimate television champions. And the storyline was beautiful. They both, said that they were the number 1 television champion in the world. They put stock in their brand. They put stock in their company. And, God bless no internet. God bless no social media and no phones like that. And God bless me not even getting the Wrestling Observer, where Dave Meltzer would ruin it by saying in a couple of months, Jim Crockett is going to, purchase UWF from Bill Watts and is going to, absolve it from everything. Is going to absolve its history. Is going to absolve all that stuff. Because then the match at Starrcade 1987 between them would be predictable and don't feel big. But not knowing that, TW, of course, you're a UWF guy, and I know there's NWA guys. So
and I'm a Terry Taylor guy.
And you're a Terry Taylor guy. So this match legitimately felt really big. Because it was, it wasn't Dr. Death against Ric Flair, which would have been a bigger deal. But at least for this purpose,
we got Dr. Death versus Barry Windham on the subcard.
Yeah, and actually this television championship even went over more than that match. So this was a big effing deal, TW. So, on the grand scale, this was written out beautifully. And then, of course, Nikita is the last UWF champion and is the unified television champion. Talk about that memory in young TW's mind.
I want to say Nikita was a baby at that point, too. And I was a Nikita fan.
Mm-hmm.
Again, my allegiance is to UWF. And you're right, because in hindsight, it's so dirty to me because of what inevitably happened. But as it was going on, it wasn't presented as NWA bought them. It was presented like they were working together, like Impact and AEW.
No, I want to stop you there and keep your train of thought, because why I want to talk about this, how they did it right and how Impact and AEW did it so wrong. AEW disrespected Impact. It never felt big to them. It felt like an afterthought.
Also felt predictable.
Felt predictable. In this terms of NWA, UWF, Nikita Koloff wrestled on UWF television. And in hindsight, and of course the other scale, Terry Taylor went into Atlanta GA studios to attack Nikita Koloff to build on this match, making it bigger. Go ahead, TW. I'm sorry to interrupt
keep them as separate companies. That's what it felt like, bragging rights. It didn't feel like a merge. It felt like I'm better, you're better. But I think that's when the writing started becoming on the wall. Was when they merged them. But they told the story well enough, like, we don't need 2 world TV champions, right? We're working together. We need 1. And the UWF champion wasn't called the world champion. He was called the UWF champion because universal and world would sound oxymoronic, right? You're using both words. So they basically relegated that belt to being like the IC belt, right? And then I want to say Barry Windham was the Western States Heritage champion when he wrestled Dr. Death. And I think Barry won.
No, Barry lost.
No, he did lose. Yes. All right, so that was the trade-off.
And that title was the number 1 contender to the UWF title for some strange reason.
Western, we're in the East and Mid-South, but we're going to be the Western States guys going to be the number 1 contender because they had too many freaking belts. That's why. But but Terry Terry. Never once did you not believe in Terry. Like, you thought he was going to back up everything he said he was going to do. And I want to say he lost clean with the Russian sickle. I think him and Eddie tried to cheat or something, but got foiled. But I just remember being mad as hell, man. And then when they merged them and he just shows up with the NWA TV title, I'm like, what the? Like, so you just got rid of it. Is what you did. That's it. You got rid of it. And so
he couldn't carry that. He couldn't carry that at the airport. He didn't want to carry that at the airport. He left it home.
Yeah. No, I'm saying as a company, you got rid of it. And then I don't even know whatever happened to the UWF belt. They didn't merge it with nothing. It just went away.
It just went away. I think technically Dr. Death kept it for himself in his mantle. It was the original belt. He kept to keep it in his house. So I just wanted to talk about that because
and Nikita has that UWF title.
He ain't gonna give it away. He don't have to give it up to nobody.
Right.
To come at him in Cleveland, Ohio. But I wanted to talk about that at least for a second, TW, because again, what we saw a couple of days ago and the buildup was just so horrendous. It was so bad. And then when you look at what they did, and again, if we didn't know the politics and we didn't know the behind the scenes, it would have been lackluster. I'm going to be honest with you, because we would have known Nikita was going to be the champion no matter what's going to happen, because the person, buying the company gets all the power and all the leverage.
And WCW, in hindsight, is not going to have a UWF World Television Champion. So inevitably, it was going away. So but.
So now
then we're also kids too, so
of course, and that's the beauty, the innocence of being a kid. So we can be that fan. You could be that Terry Taylor fan. I could be that Nikita Cola fan, and we could be like, "Ha, my guy is better than your guy. My company is better than your company." That was the best bragging rights when it mattered. Now it just doesn't matter anymore. It's just trolling in 2020 wonder. Now, before we talk about my favorite, the ECW Television Championship, let's at least get into the 90s of the WCW Television Championship belt time. Now, again, the funny thing is we said about, the U.S. belt, in the 90s, it lost its luster as a very important title to get to the heavyweight title. So for the 90s cable television with WCW Saturday Night, WCW Main Event, WCW Monday Nitro, WCW Thunder, the television champion belt or the champion guy, in theory, has a lot of shows to defend his belt. So that would have been overexposure. It would have been monotonous. It would have been stupid, TW. So, what say you about the 90s television champion?
First of all, the real big problem is the fact that it looked like that. It looks like...
Well, it's not bad. I'm not saying it's
like
good.
Either a cruiserweight title or a woman's heavyweight title, right?
Okay.
It almost looks like that cool Hulk Hogan WWF title belt, the one that had the American flag, the Canadian flag, all that on there. But why? Why did they go away? I mean, I know because they went NWA to WCW, but there's nothing better than the NWA World Television title. What the fuck? It took me to Etsy. I don't want to go to Etsy.
Well, they wanted to create their own history, their own, prestige, and their own image. Yeah, they had to package it and rebrand it so in their own image. And remember, that wasn't even that wasn't the first design. That was the second design. The first design of the WCW television title was silver and was kind of not curved, but it was kind of like triangular.
Right. Well, this is the cool one, which is my favorite, but I like the red because it almost looks like it's just AWA. But yeah, there is a second WCW one. I'll pull that up too. But it's just, the guys that I remember as WCW because we talked about them recently. What the hell? Oh, I forgot TV. I just put WCW title.
Well, remember the names in the 90s. Steve Regal was synonymous.
Steve Austin is the one. It's not trying. Why does it keep taking me to Etsy and eBay? Damn it.
That's okay. Steve Regal was synonymous with it.
But he had that little girly belt.
Right.
I'm on eBay. What? I hate this.
Forget it, TW. Forget it.
No,
I get where you're going.
Damn it.
But Steve Regal was synonymous in the 90s.
This
Reflection
one here, which looks like the WWF
that's
heavyweight title that Taka Michinoku had. Remember that one?
Yeah, I remember that one.
He was actually the light heavyweight champion, not cruiserweight. I think this might be the same. Is that the same belt?
Yeah, that's the same belt.
Silver.
It was the silver one.
Which that looks better up close, but dude, come on. Look at that beauty right there. Look at the red one. It's just a thing of beauty, man.
You're biased. You're biased. That's what it is. You're just biased. But it's okay. But in the 90s, you talk about Steve Regal being the champion, Steve Austin being the champion, Ricky Steamboat in the 90s when he came back. That's right. I'm right. Yeah. I'm right. Ricky Steamboat was a television champion in the 90s. Yes, I'm right again. But Luger was a television champion in the 90s. I remember Prince Iaukea being a champion during the Nitro years.
You remember Prince Iaukea?
Yes, I do. And you remember, certain people. The funny thing about the television championship, it felt to me like in the mid 90s, in the Nitro era, it was like people like Booker T would be complaining like, where's my spot? Why can't I be going after the U.S. title? Why can't I be going after, Hulk Hogan and the WCW heavyweight title? And it was almost like, well, why don't you fight for the WCW television title and make something of it? And Booker T made something of it. When Booker T was given the opportunity to have a belt TW, Booker T was a pretty prominent television champion in the 90s. What say you about Booker T?
He did it right. He worked his way up. He had every belt. Wasn't he one of their Grand Slam champions or whatever?
Well, the belts that mattered, yes. He had almost all the belts.
But the U.S. titles were gone. The tag belts.
The U.S. tag titles were gone. But
Booker T did it right. Like no offense, Marty Jannetty, but Stevie Ray was the Marty. Booker was the Sean. And the cool thing about Booker is he didn't, because I think that's the difference between Sean and Marty even. And Neidhart and Brett, I guess not really. But Sean changed his look when he started wrestling singles. So he didn't look like a tag team wrestler in a singles match. And Booker did that. Booker changed his look, grew his hair out, wore short tights instead of the Harlem Heat gear, did the Spinaroonie, which he might have done that at Harlem Heat too. I don't really remember. But Booker changed. He evolved, kind of like The Undertaker's famous for, changing up his look, but still being The Undertaker. Booker T was still Booker T. He didn't get rebranded. Well, he was G.I. Bro for a minute. But he changed his look up, and he progressively got better and better and better. And I don't think anyone who at least has a clue about wrestling he has it.
Well, he took advantage with that television title to fight on WCW Saturday Night. He actually tried to bring that prestige of the 80s of, defending that title as much as you can on the important shows. And the two important shows in the mid-90s was Monday Nitro and WCW Saturday Night. And Booker T, that wasn't overexposure, but that was paying your dues, TW. That's why
I was getting seen.
Yeah. Absolutely, was getting seen.
I firmly believe Booker T finally got his due because he finally was able to be seen. Like, he's not hidden in the tag team, and they were good as a tag team. It wasn't even Harlem. He's good, they were good. And sounds like I don't like Stevie Ray. I did like Stevie Ray. Stevie Ray was good for what he was, the tag team partner to Booker T. But Booker T was the star. Booker T. I'll be honest. I probably was wrestling at that time, or at least training, so I don't remember Booker T as TV champion. I remember him as tag champ. I remember him as U.S. champ, I think, and world champion. But the U.S. title my memories of that might even be the WWF when he was doing the best of 7 with Benoit or whatever. But
that too. But he was a WCW U.S. champion. Booker T
is a guy to me. It's easy to say this now because he did have all the belts, but Booker T to me is a guy who didn't need a belt. I liked watching Booker T no matter what the match was, like whether he was chasing for the belt, defending the belt, heel, face. I liked him in Impact, and I had a hard time watching Impact, but I like Booker T. He's funny to me. He's got natural charisma, and he works. And again, even though the TV title got diluted in the 90s, he's just as that belt loses no prestige. You want
to talk about
compared to 80s.
Right. You want to talk about dilution of the television championship. Vince Russo, and shout out to the brand, but Vince Russo did fuck up on this one. I think he did this. He actually booked it where Scott Hall won the title. Scott Hall didn't even want to be the WCW television champion, whether he was drugged up or his demons were kicking in. But he never treated that belt with respect. He threw it in the trash on TV, said, forget about this. They actually booked it where Jim Duggan, because when Russo was in power, he had that, that power trip or whatever. he was actually booked as a janitor, Jim Duggan. He found the television title in the trash, picked it up, and declared himself the WCW television champion, and he is recognized as the last WCW television champion. And he defended that title a lot of times against former partner of Robert Gibson, Rock and Roll Expresser Robert Gibson. That was the last feud for the television championship on WCW Saturday Night ITW in the 2000s.
Morton or Gibson versus Duggan?
Yes. For the television championship. That is the ultimate example.
Lazy eyes. That's crazy.
Yeah, Duggan was looking to his left, Robert was looking to his right, and they never met in the
match with those two.
They'll never meet in the middle. But I wanted to at least talk. I at least wanted to talk about that dilution, because you are spot on. Because certain people, elevated themselves because of that title, but then there's some people just didn't care, and even the booker like Vince Russo didn't care about the television championship. You see the example of it, just bringing it down. So before we talk about my favorite organization, TW, anything else you want to say about, the 90s WCW television champion?
You just hurt my feelings telling me that story. I'm glad I didn't see that happen live.
You was wrestling. You was wrestling in Michigan when that was happening in 2000s.
That's worse than Medusa throwing the women's championship in the garbage can, because that actually had significance. Mm-hmm. This sounds like a knockoff version. And yes, there is some comedy to Duggan finding that belt in there, but it's such a he might as well piss in that can first and go, oops, what's that in there? Oh, it's a baby belt. That's that's where I have a problem when guys don't respect the history of the business. It's you can't have what it is today without having had what it already was before. And whether people want to compare the two generations and say modern wrestling is better or WWF is shit or whatever the hell the YWC want to say, everything is a progression. You wouldn't everyone who anybody thinks is better today, the only reason they're better is because they had to outdo the guys that were the best back then. So you had to one-up it. And again, like I said, nothing more. Like you can do 75 flips from the top rope and land on a guy in the ring. It might be cool the first time I see it, but there's so many of them. Nothing will ever blow me away the way that Frankensteiner did when Rick Steiner or Scott Steiner first did it. So,
just because you're athletically better in 2020 Wonder than 1990 Wonder does not mean you're more over than that guy or a better worker than that guy in the 90s. So let's talk about Extreme Championship Wrestling. My favorite. You know me, I'm a mark for this organization, TW. Yes, right. That's right. Have a ding on that one. But, before it was Extreme, it was Eastern Championship Wrestling. It was part of the NWA umbrella. So that's why the television title was created, TW, if you did not know that, because Eastern Championship Wrestling and the National Wrestling Alliance back in 1992, when they were trying to make that partnership between Todd Gordon and I forget the guy that was controlling the NWA back in the tri-state area. The name escapes me, TW, so I apologize. But they were trying to revamp, the NWA again.
Herb?
It wasn't Herb Abrams. It wasn't Herb Abrams. I forget the name right now, but it escapes me. Reflectionites, I apologize. But there was after the disillusioned relationship between WCW and NWA, they had to go somewhere else, and Eastern Championship Wrestling picked up that mold, and that's why the television championship was created in 1992, DW, if you did not know the reason why, because of that relationship before they broken up in 1994 when Shane Douglas dropped the NWA 10 pounds of gold onto the ground. So people
garbage can, I thought it was.
I just dropped it to the ground and disrespected it. So I know you don't like that, but it was needed, TW. It was very much needed. But people like
Todd
Jimmy
Gordon.
Yeah, Todd Gordon was ECW. I just don't remember the NWA guy. So,
Oh, I thought Todd Gordon. Oh, he's the one that broke away.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay. Damn it. That's the name I was trying to find in my head.
I forget the other guy. He's a bald-headed guy.
Isn't Todd Gordon a bald-headed guy?
He is a bald-headed guy, but I forget the other guy's name. But anyway, Jimmy Snuka was a television champion.
Eddie Gilbert.
Eddie Gilbert was.
He was part of the Eastern Championship. Right?
Terry Funk was a television champion. Sabu was a former television champion. Your man,
Dennis Coralluzzo.
There you go. Dennis Coralluzzo. That was the relationship, and I forgot that name. Thank you, TW.
Yep.
But why I wanted to talk about ECW, because the television champion was the Intercontinental Champion. The television champion in ECW was the United States Champion. It was the secondary title.
Working man's title.
It was the working man's title. And you got working men here. And I named them. Terry Funk, Jimmy Snuka, Taz was a television champion. JT Smith, Mikey Whipwreck, Too Cold Scorpio. One of my favorite television champions of all time was Too Cold Scorpio. It was 1 and 1A. It was Too Cold Scorpio.
He reminded me a lot of Flash Funk.
No, he wasn't Flash Funk in ECW. He was Too Cold Scorpio. He was actually
Worst action figure ever made. Well,
I know, but he's 1 and 1A in my ECW days, in the ECW hierarchy of television.
He was
champions.
heel there too, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm. He was a heel. He is 1A, but the one is Mr. Monday Night, Mr. Pay-Per-View, RVD, Rob Van Dam, 700 days as the ECW television champion, and did not lose the television championship legitimately. He lost it. He had to drop it because of injury. He broke his ankles, so he had to give up that title. So TW, I know you're not a fan of ECW. You didn't watch it enough, but you know the name of RVD. You know the athletic prowess of RVD.
Wrestled everywhere, and on top of it, he's from my state.
I know you saw him in those Detroit shows. But again, RVD is my guy, and of course you said, like, during your Detroit wrestling days that the ECW guys like Too Cold Scorpio, Sandman, and Taz came there. So one of those guys
Paul E was at every damn show.
So one of those guys was carrying the ECW Television Championship, and it was the Winged Eagle ECW Television Championship that I liked that design. So TW, RVD because he's from Battle Creek, Michigan. I love RVD because of, the moxie. He was the athletic. I don't want to compare him to Tully Blanchard, but he was the athletic Tully Blanchard, because while Tully can get you over on the mic, RVD had the athletic skills. Yeah, there you go. The Winged Eagle World Television Championship. That was one of the best designs ever. RVD uses athletic abilities, and of course he looks stoned. So that was actually...
He didn't look stoned. He was stoned.
He was stoned. So he had that, like, mellow presence, TW.
That's Taz's belt, right?
Yeah, that's Taz's belt, yeah. But TW, RVD, you know him in your Battle Creek, Michigan days of wrestling over there. So, any stories, any war stories of ECW people?
No. Well, just Too Cold Scorpio, my first match in the States ever. I asked him to watch it and give me feedback. He did, and he was honest with me. I mean, not shitty. He was just like, hey, it looks like you wrestled that match before, and we had 4 other times. So,
right.
Taz was cordial. Tommy Dreamer was always cool. I've seen Tommy Dreamer my entire time wrestling. He was always cool to me. What's his name? Little Guido, awesome. He'd be in a locker room with you, and he'd start talking to you. You didn't have to go up to him. Buddy Landell, I think he did some ECW, didn't Buddy Landell? No.
Just jobbing. He did job.
Right.
No, Jack Victory.
No, the guy that just died, man. He had to change his name. Freddie Joy Floyd. Tracy Armstrong. Right?
Oh, okay.
Is it Armstrong? Tracy Armstrong?
Tracy Smothers?
Smothers.
Oh, okay.
He teamed with the other Armstrong as the Wild Southern Boys. He was awesome. But all those guys, man, they came in. And here's the thing. Like, I've said it before. My idea of what ECW was not what it was. I thought all of it was like the Sandman, New Jack stuff. I thought all of it was. It wasn't on TV here. If it was on at like 3 a.m, and I was already passed out. So I regret not having tried to watch it back then, because I probably would have tried to work there, and the Los Rudos gimmick would have been perfect there, right? And our name made it out there.
You would have got your ass kicked by the gangsters. That I would get. Or you would have had a great program again. You would have had a great program. Yeah.
So I regret it, and I like Shane Douglas, and I've gotten to meet him because he's friends with Scott D'Amore, and he would come here for shows or signings or whatever.
Former ECW television champion too, Shane Douglas.
Yep. And so all these guys, and really in hindsight, I should have been on board with them, because they were what people today would consider AEW the alternative. like something different. And watching it, especially doing the show with you, I've seen a lot of ECW that I was never, ever familiar with. And it is way better than I gave it credit for. And I've always liked Paulie. I liked him when he was in WCW as a manager. I don't like Paul Heyman. I wish he was still Paulie Dangerously, damn it. But whatever. He's Paul Heyman. I like him. I think what ECW was more than anything was everybody on the same page and with passion. And you can't fault anybody for doing that. And you know what? Some people will say that's what AEW is. I disagree. I think they do have passion, but I think their motivating goal is to beat Vince, whether they want to admit it or not. And I don't think that's what ECW's was. ECW just wanted their piece of the pie. And RVD, to me, he's probably in my top 10. I hate the choices he's made in his career, but in the end of the day, if you look at his resume, it's still a pretty damn impressive resume. Whether or not he got in his own way, he's like a successful Scott Hall. Yeah, he got in his own way because his love for weed ruined a lot of things for him.
Well, I'm glad that he only stuck to the weed and not to the hard stuff that Scott Hall did.
Exactly.
But the one thing I want to say about RVD and why he made that he was one of the greatest television champions of all time, no matter what organization, was the one moment, and you was wrestling. So I want you to picture this. In 2000, before he injured his ankle and broke it, he had a stare down with the ECW heavyweight champion, Mike Awesome, at the time, before, he jumped ship to WCW. It was the ECW champion. It was the Mike Awesome. It was RVD. Everybody was cheering for RVD. Everybody knew that RVD was just one match away to becoming the heavyweight champion. It was like Hogan and Warrior looking at each other with the belts. And you knew they were going to do a unification match, just like, WrestleMania 6. Title for title. And everybody knew. We were even telling Paul Heyman, if you ECW arena guys, you want to talk about fans being shills? Those were shills. They were telling Paul Heyman, book this match, title for title. We want RVD to be the champ. He was that close. If it wasn't for that one match where he just broke his ankle, he would have had it. And we don't know where the business would have been. But, of course, Paul Heyman doesn't, he bounced his check. So it didn't matter who had the belt. It was going to happen that ECW was going to fold. So either way. But the stare down between those two reminded me of Hogan Warrior at WrestleMania 6. So I know you didn't know it, you didn't see it, but I just wanted to give you that visual.
I like Mike Awesome too, by the way. I thought he was definitely ahead of his time.
So I just wanted to give you that visual about how important that was at the ECW arena.
Their fans, again, I'm a purist at the time, and I didn't like the fans cussing and all that kind of stuff. But in hindsight, it's contagious. You can't watch ECW and not be like, damn, that would have been cool to be there.
It's the passion.
Goosebumps. Right.
It was the passion. I had goosebumps watching it on ECW TV. So that's what it was. Yeah.
For sure.
So
contagious.
So before we close Reflection Nights, this has been a great championship edition of the Pro Wrestling Spotlight. So what a way to close out with the television championship. TW, I know Tully Blanchard's your favorite television champion of all time, but give me another ulterior name and why. Maybe who's 1 and 1A that TW would say.
Taylor.
No. Okay, not Tully, not Terry. Okay, untapped potential television champion that you say.
That's easy. I mean, he's probably the second greatest NWA/WCW World Television Champion of all time. He had it all. He won the match to win that title in the building when I was there, and I was sent on a beer run for his opponent. But it's easily the Renegade. When the Renegade won that belt from Arn Anderson at the Great American Bash in O'Hare Arena in Dayton, Ohio, I was there when history was made. And he
this ain't April 1st, man. I'm not being fooled here.
You said untapped potential.
That is not an untapped potential guy, and you're trying to say it with a straight face. You serious?
It's Steve Austin, because Steve Austin at the time was floundering. He really wasn't doing much. They put that belt on him, and then from that point on, he went on to bigger, better things. U.S. champ, tag champ for Pillman. By the way, Pillman and Austin not being broken up, probably they'd be in my top 2 or 3. They would be bumping, it would be Rockers, Brainbusters, and then Hollywood Blondes. And I it was like Austin and Pillman were put together for me to be a fan of it. Like they were fire and fire. They just worked together and they even feuded against each other well. But Austin getting that TV title was, and I knew him from World Class and Global. I think he was on Global for a minute because we talked about he teamed with Rod Thorpe or Rod, whatever the hell his name was. They looked identical. They had those
Rod Price,
Rod Price. They both had that tiny little ponytail thing or whatever. And Austin was just, again, I knew he was a star the second I saw him, and him getting that TV title was, like you said, the test to elevate him to other things. And if it wasn't for politics, Austin would have been a WCW world champion. But Hogan ruins a lot of things for a lot of people.
Got you. So my favorite television, well, before I even say my favorite and untapped potentials, let's give credence to Billy Corgan right now, who is trying to resurrect the National Wrestling Alliance and the television championship, the one that you have held up, the Reds belt one, is alive and well with the Pope. And their television championship matches are actually kind of funny, TW, if you didn't know this. Their time limit is exactly 6 minutes and 5 seconds. You must win it.
6:05?
6:05.
Nice.
So if you did not know that, TW,
for that.
if you did not know that, TW, and Reflectionize, if you did not know that, watch it on the Fight Network. Billy Corgan is trying to resurrect the National Wrestling Alliance. That is his rules for the television championship. 6 minutes and 5 seconds is your time limit in defending the title.
Bump it up to 8:05, like the end of the show, because A, it gives him 2 more minutes, and B, it's the end of the time limit.
Well, it's worked. Ricky Starks says,
write him. I'm gonna tweet him.
Go ahead, tweet to Billy Corgan, but that's the rule. 6 minutes and 5 seconds. So my favorite television champion of all time, I'm gonna be, a little bit biased, even though his reign. That's too easy. I want to go in a different direction. Rob Van Dam is 1. Here's my 1A. Well, 1C. Oh no. 1A, 1B. 1B, you already know it's Rob Van Dam and Too Cold Scorpio on that end. But my favorite NWA television champion, even though he had that belt for only 3 months, but I still liked him when he had the belt, was the Great Muta. The match, the feud of '89, the second feud behind Flair and Funk was Sting and Muta. And when he won it on WCW Saturday Night or main event in September of '89, pissed off a lot of people in that arena. Pissed me off too, but it pissed me off in a good way because I was like, yes, he's got the belt. And I was like, that's one step away from the U.S. belt. That's one step away from Ric Flair and challenging for that belt. I thought bigger and better things was on the horizon for him, but he was smart, TW. He was smart because he was like, I can't stay in America too long. He treated his stint
like a territory.
He treated it like the ultimate territory and went back to Japan. Maybe selfishly, I wanted him to stay and see if he could,
always want more.
But when he came back, it wasn't the same. So, but I don't blame Muta. I just blame the times. And I blame the bookers and management for that. So, even though Muta was an NWA heavyweight champion, which you don't recognize, it was the international championship. He was a champion, but I like Muta.
Right up there with the Universal title.
I love Muta as the NWA champion. If you go to the PWRs, the Aftermags with him with that belt, looks great. And I think he had that red and silver paint on his face to even match himself with the belt. So if you ever find that Reflection Nights, this is a great picture in the PWI mags.
Right, Big Ray should find that and put that on our little thumbnail for the show.
Well, we'll see. But, again, there's three brands here, so we'll see what Ray does. But anyway, my untapped potential is actually a very surprising one because I want to at least name him because it's a tale of two cities, you could say. It's a tale of two characters. He was Troy Orndorff in your neck of the woods, or Troy Martin. Then he turns into the babyface Shane Douglas in the UWF. He was a green babyface, the kid. But they saw untapped potential in him. But then when he goes to ECW and becomes the franchise and really has that moxie and has that swagger, he put the company on his back, and no matter what belt that he had, TW, it was the most important belt.
He's probably the only guy to be UWF and
ECW
World Television Champion.
In my list, yes. You're absolutely 100% correct. It was only Shane Douglas.
Unless Eddie Gilbert had it.
No.
Yeah,
he did not have. He didn't have the ECW belt. He did not have these.
Add a guy to my list.
Absolutely, we got a couple minutes.
It's actually kind of cool, especially for me. So I grew up in the hood, right?
Mm-hmm.
Savannah Jack, I want to put on that list because he had that belt. Savannah Jack was very quiet. He never really talked, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't that many black dudes in wrestling, period, let alone UWF. The only other black guy in UWF was Iceman Parsons, who was as loud as they come. And,
right.
And I want to say every now and again, Pez Watley would be there with him, and they would beat up Savannah Jack. Like, for some reason, it's an unwritten rule. If there's three black guys, two of them got to beat up the other one, right? So, but it made Savannah Jack over, right? Like if he didn't have that belt,
you had sympathy. You had sympathy for him,
right? He just lost in the crowd, but he had that belt, successfully defended it. When he lost it, I think he got screwed out of it by Eddie Gilbert. Can't remember if that's who he lost it to. But Savannah Jack, and he's someone like, it's kind of like a Brickhouse Brown in Mid-South and World Class. I think he was there, but like Savannah Jack to me is synonymous with UWF. Like he never went anywhere else. I don't even think he made it to a WCW match when they bought him.
I think he went down to USWA in Tennessee for Joe Lawler.
But he's people who watch Mid-South are always going to remember Savannah Jack, just like people are going to remember because Brickhouse Brown would do jobs for like, remember Primetime Wrestling?
Mm-hmm.
He would. I think as a kid, I saw Brickhouse Brown doing jobs for WWF, but he was still a Memphis guy or whatever, always getting over down there. But Savannah Jack is somebody I think I'm glad he was TV champion because if he didn't even have that belt, I wouldn't have brought him up on this show. Let alone, I might have brought him up because I've always liked him. He was always somebody that I cheered for.
While people today might have said that they threw him a bone, he earned that bone in the 80s because of not only for being African American. Right. Not only being African-American, not only going in the Mid-South area with the good old boys and all that racism. As a babyface, he earned the respect of some racist white fans in the Mid-South area. So Savannah Jack, what a great pick as untapped potential. And with that, Reflectionites, we close out the Spotlights Championship Edition here at the PWSL Networks at podbean.com. TW, it's been one hell of a ride. So, what are we going to do to top it? We're going to go back to the movies next week. We are going to finally do the movie that I've been waiting to do for a long time. Roddy Piper, the Tonga Kid.
Body Slam?
Body Slam. It's time to do
Tanya
it.
Roberts.
Tanya Roberts. You can get your lubricants, TW, for watching Tanya Roberts again. So, we're going to, it's...
Died, man. She's died.
Well, she's an angel. She'll be in your bed as an angel.
She was also an angel, Charles.
Yes. Angel. Yeah. So you know what? You remember that Ghostbusters scenes where the ghost got Dan Aykroyd got blown by a ghost? That's gonna be you with Tanya.
Said that happened to him.
Oh God. Well, anyway, we're gonna close out.
He said it happened.
Yeah, I know he did, but he was coked up. But anyway. Next week, we're going to go to the movies, and we're going to talk about Body Slam with Roddy Piper, Tonga Kid, Tanya Roberts. It's going to be fun going back to the movies, TW. So you're going to get your liquor going. You're going to get your White Castles. So, TW, give out those social media platform addresses so we can get out of here.
All right. So, our good man, we got to go with @Big Ray Hernandez. We can't do any of this without him. The most overworked, the hardest working man in podcasting, Big Ray. Then we have our show @PW Reflection. Travis, because I brought you up a couple times, even though you probably don't listen to us, you jerk. @Nuts and Bolts PW, penis whipped. Bolts is VOELTZ. He can't even spell bolts right. Then we have the people that make this possible, Big Vito Brand. So bigvitobrand.wixsite.com. That's WIXSITE. He has a Patreon that Vito does at patreon.com/The Big Vito Brand. My friends Matt and Stacy and I have a YouTube channel called Dum Dum Duo and an Idiot. It's on hiatus right now because Matt's on a 30-day ban from Facebook. It's halfway through it, though. And the next one we're going to do is that damn fish. And I vow to bite it. I will at least bite that fish. I might not eat the whole thing, and I might throw it right up. But I'm going to at least bite that fish. We have a lot of people who want to be there when we do it. So this might be like a live video in front of an audience where we all throw up. We're all going to have our own buckets. I might even use my WWF popcorn bucket. And then for me, at Tommy Wonder 19. I still get on there and backhand some idiots on Twitter every now and again politically. My Snapchat's number Wonder. I don't know why I'm telling people that. Facebook.com/Tommy Wonder. At the Tommy Wonder is also my more wrestling social nice guy Twitter. And then at Tommy Wonder 19 is my Instagram. And then our good man JB, who's again, he had a hemorrhoid flare up. He's missed the last few weeks. At the P1JB. And that's it for us. Now it's yours.
And of course, you can find me on the Twitter, and I apologize to the guy on Twitter that I erased the message. If you remember this, since you've been binge watching, go to my Twitter again at PW Hustle PROF. That's PW Hustle Prof. And of course, follow my guys, my PW Hustle brothers. The Masked Man has no Twitter, but my other guy, Billy Ray Valentine, Mr. Infinite Fringe himself, has a Twitter at Obi-Wan You Know Me. And of course, the king of the reactions, A-Track Brown, the dirtiest of the city, at A-Track Dastley. And again, we're going to the movies next week. Body Slam with Roddy Piper. I guess I wanted to get Roddy Piper in because A&E has done his biography. So let's take advantage of the Roddy Piper train and, pay homage to one of the best movies ever, Body Slam. The best wrestling movie ever. I know I'm drunk a little bit. It's okay. But for me,
I'm going to have to probably find that on YouTube.
I will get you a link. Don't worry. I will get it. It's my job. I will find it, and I will get it to you. But anyway, I am the Professor. That's the Iron Stomach 1 TW saying good night, and see you next time here, Reflectionites. Go Capitals.